Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanarabindam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Vande Guru Shri Charanarabindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarabindam Vande Guru Mahaprabhu ki Tananvita Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Romancha Kampasu Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanarabindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Diramajanado Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanarabindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satvana Truptan Hari Bhakta Shangan Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satvana Truptan Kridvaiva Trupti Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanarabindam Shri Kama Dabayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Shri Kama Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Pratikchanasa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarabindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarabindam Ne kunja yono ratikeli siddhai Jajali vir yukti apekshaneya Ne kunja yono Satrati Daksha Atibala Bhasya Vande Gora Shri Charanarvindam. Saccadharitena Shamastashashre Uktastatthava Vyataiva Sarvi Saccadharitena Shamastashashre Uktastatthava Kintu Prabodja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Gora Shri Charanarvindam. Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Dhyayam Stuvam Stasya Yashastrin Sandhyam Vande Gora Shri Charanarvindam. Dhyayam Stuvam Stasya Yashastrin Sandhyam Vande Gora Shri Charanarvindam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Channa Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hariyaraye Namah, Krishna Jadavaye Namah, Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaye Namah, Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan, गिरिधारी गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhav, Radha Nila Madhav, Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, 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 Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Lakshmana Hanuman. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Premanande. Jaya Vishwaparpanam Prabhajaka Acharya Suttara Sarasi Srimad Iskon Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnav Sramani Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prema Bhakti Data Patita Pavana His Divine Grace Abhachara Vinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhar Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Jayananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिनंदन श्रीमन गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावृंदावन अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमदान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जग की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहदांग ट्रांसनेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपना राधा कुंद श्याम कुंद गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रजभूमि वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय। डेलोशिप श्री श्री राधा नीलमाधव की जय। श्री श्री पूर्णवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु श्रीमती सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर सिंहरे भगवान की जय। जय गंगा माई जमुना माई की तुलसी महारानी वृंदी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। बोलो श्रीमती राधा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौर प्रमानंदे। All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Hari. Haribol. Want to try my to sing? Narasimhamadin Sharanam Prapade Tava Karakamalavare Natha Adbhuta Shringandalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Vrindan Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Bhavakara Kamalavare Natha Adbhuta Shringa Lalita Hiranyakashipu Tanavinga Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavadrita Narahari
शंकर भगवान की, तख्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज की, श्रील प्रभुपाद की।
श्री वृंदाई तुलसी बाई प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादेवी सत्यवताय नमः। वृंदाई तुलसी बाई प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादेवी सत्यवताय नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी बाई प्रिय केशव सत्य कृष्ण भक्ति प्रादेवी सत्यवताय नमः। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की।
कृष्ण प्रेयसे नमो नमः।
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसे नमो नमः।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो तुम्हार शरण ला तरवांच पूर्ण हो।
तुम्हार शरण ला तरवांच पूर्ण।
कृपा करी करो तारे वृंदावन वासे।
तुम्हें कृपा
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी। दीन कृष्ण दासी करे नम रहा।
दीन कृष्ण दास को ए नम रहा।
श्री राधा
प्रेम सदाई नवासी
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदाई नभासी
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदाई नवासी
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी
कृष्ण
प्रेयसी नमो नमः
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणं पदे पदे
अनेकानि सपप्पने ब्रह्मत्यधिकानि स कलितानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणं पदे पदे
अनेकानि सपप्पने ब्रह्मत्यधिकानि स कलितानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणं पदे पदे
अनेकानि सपप्पने ब्रह्मत्यधिकानि स कलितानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण कृष्ण
हरे
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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी
जय
तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी
जय वृंदा देवी
जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल
नित्य गौर हरि
हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद
जय जय
प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव
जय गुरुदेव
तुलसी महारानी की
जय। श्री वृंदाई तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादे देवी सत्य भक्तये नमो नमः। वृंदाई तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादे देवी सत्य भक्तये नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य कृष्ण भक्ति प्रादे देवी सत्य भक्तये श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय। O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is also to grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carry the angels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always fame in love Shri Radha and Govinda. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam ki jai. Chaitodharpanamajanam Bhavamada Vagni Nirvapanam Shriyakari Vachandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadho Jevanam Ananda Budivadhanam Pratipadam Purnam Daswaranam Savatmasnam Varam Paravijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Smarane Nakala Vidadustava Kripaya Bhagavan Namapi Durdhaiva Midrishamya Jani Nanuraga Trinarapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishuna Amani Namanadena Kirtaniya Sada Hari Adhanam na janam na sundarim Kavitam va jagadisha kamaye Mama janmani janmanishwari Bhavata bhakti rahitu kitvayi Oye nanda tanuja kinkaram Paritama vishame bhavambudo Kripaya tava pada pankaja Stita dhuli sadrisham vichintaya Nayanam galora shrudharaya Varanam gadgadharudhaya gira Pulakairchitam vapukada Tavanama grahane bhavisyati Jugaitam nimishena Chakshusha pravasaitam Shunya itam jagata sarvam Govinda virahena me Asli shava padaratam pinashtumam Adarshanan madmahatam karotuva Jatha tathava vidadhatu lampatu Matpranathastu saivana paro Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam ki jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaura Tveshe Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine, Nivishesha Shunnavadi, Patsatyari Satarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully test the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a lord and straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause by devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? Or will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, the Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities in the strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Jaivancha kripatarubhascha kripasindhubhyaivacha paritanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Jai Ananta Kuch Vaishnavindi Ki Jai. Shri Guru Vandan Mangala Charan Ki Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakchurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Bandiham Shri Guru Shri Jota Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakambhitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunavari Pasattari Satarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamine Shri Varshabhanu Videvi Daitaya Kripabhaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhujjala Premadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murthaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudhapo Siddhanta Dvantaharine Nama Gaura Kishoraya Sakshave Ragyamurtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Paramujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchit Anandanamine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virbhava Muniswam Nirdesha Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sabhabhoma Sri Jagannataya Te Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavaranayo Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnayo Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauri Krishna Namaha
Panchatattvamakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktarkam Namami Bhakta Saktikam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Jayatam Sudator Bangur Mamamanda Matir Gati Matsarva Swapadam Boja Radha Madana Mohana Divya Vindaranya Kaputumadaha Shrimad Ratnakara Simhasanastito Shrimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestali Bihi Sevyamanos Manami Shriman Rasa Rasaram Vivam Sivata Tatastita Karsangrina Swanir Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nishananda Sri Gauta Gadadhar Sri Gaur Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakata Sadmasakalpa Riksha Laksa Brite Susarabira Bayanantam Kai Nam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kwananda Aravinda Dalaitaksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Visesha Sobam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanam Agyavam Siratnam Gadam Pranaya Keli Kalavilasam Shamam Jibangala Lita Nita Prakasam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakilandri Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Karyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayuvanam Cha Vedesa Durlabha Madurlabha Atma Bhakto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastukoti Satavatsara Sampragam Yova Yoratapi Manaso Maripungamanam Sopyasti Yad Praparisim Yavichinti Tatve Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Jaitam Jagananda Kotim Yaschakti Rasti Jagadanda Chaya Yidanta Danta Rasta Paramana Chayantarastam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Bhavita Dio Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasana Yanabusa Suktarya Mevu Nigama Pratitastuvanti Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasatpati Bhavita Abhistavirya Evanichi Rupataya Kalabi Goloka Evani Visata Kilatna Bhutto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Valochanena Santaksa Deva Hidesa Vilokati Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukala Niyamanitistana Avatar Makarod Bhuvane Sukintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Samabhavam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabhapa Bhutto Jagananda Koti Koti Svasesa Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Dragunya Tad Visaya Vidavita Yamana Sattva Valambi Parasattvam Visuddhasattvam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasad Matayamana Suya Praninam Patifalam Smaratam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jaya Yajaso Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Dijadamni Tale Chitasya Devi Maheswari Dama Sute Sutesha Tete Prabhavini Jaya Vitascha Yena Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Srististati Palaya Sadhava Saktire Kachaye Vyasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Ichana Rupam Abhyasya Chestate Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Chiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesha Yoga Sanjayate Naitata Pritakasti Hetu Yasam Bhutama Pitata Samapaitikariat Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Sistis Diparcha Devi Desantaram Abhyapeta Dipayate Vitete Samana Dharma Yastadri Gevi Hicha Vishnu Tayavi Bhati Govinda Madi Purisham Nidramananta Jagadanda Sarvamakopa Adhara Sakti Mavalamya Paramswarvatim Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyakani Svasita Kalamata Valambya Jivanti Loma Vidja Jagadanda Nata Vishnu Mahansa Yasya Kalabhisesa Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakalesana Jesa Teja Swayam Kiya Prakatiyata Pitad Pratatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pala Palava Yugam Vrinadaya Kumbadwande Pranama Samaya Sakalati Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagatjaya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahika Ganamambu Marudisasya Kalas Tatapramana Siti Jagatjayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visantiyam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschakshuri Savita Sagalagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambritakala Chakro Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmulta Papa Nichaya Sutayastapamsi Brahmadi Kitapadaka Abadayasta Jiva Haya Data Matra Vibhava Prakadapabhava Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrinda Gopa Matavendram Ahuswakarma Bandhana Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nidhati Kinchich Bhakti Bhaja Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kruda Kama Saja Pranadi Bhiti Vatsaya Moha Guru Guru Vaisavira Sanchinti Tasya Sadvisan Tanamapurete Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shia Kanta Kanta Parama Purisha Kapatarava Druma Bhumishtintamani Ganama Etuam Amritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasaki Chiranandan Chutipuram Apitada Swatyam Apitasa Yatra Siradi Vishavidisharavi Vyastasuma Nime Sardakyo Vavajiti Nahya Pratri Samaya Pajesvita Dvipantamaham Ihugola Kamiti on Vidantaste Santakshati Virachara Katipaya Shiguravasti Prayaski. Spiritual masters receiving benefits of wisdom and mercy. Just as a cloud pours water in a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I, for my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual masters, the ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. Spiritual master is always glad by the sanctity movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shishi Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes known as clean their temple and perform other similar worship. The Lord, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is lit, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastime, Radhika, Madhava, and qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relatives at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting gopis who at different times make different tastes and arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as my supreme Lord because he is most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all religious traditions and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master as a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, I receive benediction Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantha Raj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Desata Kalato Yosav Avastata Swatonyata Avilupta Vabodhatma Sayujyeta Jayakatam. Desata, circumstantial. Kalata, by the influence of time. Ya, one who. Aso, the living entity. Avastita, by situation. Swata, by dream. Anyata, by others. Avilupta, extinct. Avabodha, consciousness. Atma, pure self. Sa, he. Yujyata, engage. Ajaya, with nescience. Katam, how is it so? Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situations, dreams, or other causes. How then does he become engaged in nescience? Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So this is a great question. And you can see how Vidura is really trying to point out so many different things that need to be clarified in his mind, and for the benefit of others also. The consciousness of the living being is always present and never changes under any circumstances as above mentioned. When a living man moves from one place to another, he is conscious that he has changed his position. He is always present in the past, present, and future, like electricity. One can remember incidents from his past and can conjecture about his future also on the basis of past experience. He never forgets his personal identity, even though he is placed in awkward circumstances. How then can the living entity become forgetful of his real identity as pure spirit soul and identify with matter unless influenced by something beyond himself? This is great explanation here by Srila Prabhupada. So I'm going to just stop there for a second and then go back. And it says, the first point is, the consciousness of the living being is always present and never changes under any circumstances, as above mentioned. So, in other words, we're always conscious whether we're in this body or any other body. Then it says, when a living man moves from one place to another, he is conscious that he has changed his position. He is always present in the past, present, and future, like electricity. One can remember incidents from his past and can conjecture, meaning guess, about his future also on the basis of past experience. He never forgets his personal identity, even though he is placed in awkward circumstances. Okay, so here he's establishing some points that are factual, that the living entity always has consciousness, wherever he may be. And when he moves from one place to another, he's still conscious. He's conscious that he's changed his position. Right? And he's always present in the past, present, and future. And one can remember incidents from his past and can guess about his future also on the basis of past experience. He never forgets his personal identity, even though he is placed in awkward circumstances. Then, now comes the question, how then can the living entity become forgetful of his real identity as pure spirit soul and identify with matter unless influenced by something beyond himself? So this is amazing explanation by Prabhupada. So, yeah, I mean, if the soul is always conscious, how could it forget about being with Krishna? The conclusion is that the living entity is influenced by the avidya potency, as confirmed in both the Vishnu Purana and the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Well, this is the verse, two verses he's referring to. He's referring to Srimad Bhagavatam and then Vishnu Purana. So Srimad Bhagavatam says, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadasya yata nivyaditaratas chartrisya vigya swarat teni brahma hidaya adhikave muyanti atsurayaha tejavari madam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo misha damna swena sadadinastako kam satyam param dimahi. This is first, it's a Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, first verse. And there, this line that says, it says, O my Lord, Sri Krishna, O Son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality Godhead, I offer a respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, maintenance, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. Okay. Then it says, he is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. Then here's the point. But by him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen in water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. Okay, so that's a very significant statement, and that's what he's saying here. There must be some other thing outside of the living entity that subjects the living entity to ignorance. So it has to be something very powerful that's outside the living entity, because the living entity is always conscious of himself and his existence and his past and present, and then he's guessing about his future based on his past. Then how is it that he can be forgetful of his real identity as pure spirit soul and identify with matter unless influenced by something beyond himself? Well, that something beyond himself is the avidya potency, or Maya, and this is explained in the Vishnu Purana as well as in the first verse, first chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1. Okay, so then also it's mentioned elsewhere. So let's see where that is. The Vishnu Purana. Vishnu Bhakti 334. Where it says, Vishnu Bhakti 34. Wait a minute, Vishnu Bhakti. Padma Purana 334. 334. Not there. Okay, I'll come back to that. Well, actually, let's see. It should be on page 26. Let's take a look at that. It's also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, page 26. Vishnu Bhakti Paraprokta Chitra Gyakya Tata Para Aviti Karma Samganyad Tritiya Sakti Isate. The Supreme Lord has diverse and innumerable energies which are beyond our conception. However, great learned sages or liberated souls have studied these energies and have analyzed them in three parts. All of the energies are of Vishnu Shakti, or the power of Lord Vishnu. That is to say, they are different potencies of Lord Vishnu. The first energy is Para, transcendental. Living entities also belong to the superior energy, as has already been explained. The other energies, or material energies, are in the mode of ignorance. At the time of death, either we can remain in the inferior energy of this material world, or we can transfer it to the energy of the spiritual world. Okay, so there are three energies. It's called Vishnu Shakti. There's the the transcendental world, right, where everyone's liberated, full of transcendental consciousness. Then there's the jivas, you and me. We belong to the superior energy, but we're in a marginal position, and we have the tendency to be overwhelmed by ignorance. And then there's the material nature and material energies that are in the mode of ignorance. Okay, so that's where the phrase avidya karma samganya comes from. Okay, so that's mentioned in this verse, and it says the avidya potency as confirmed in both the Vishnu Purana and the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. The living entity is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 7.5 as para prakriti. So, now we go to 7.5, and we read this before, but it's very interesting to hear these things again. Apariyamitastvanyam pakriti vidime param jivabhutam mahabaho yaryadam daryate jagat. 7.5. Besides these, meaning besides earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, O mighty Arjuna, there's another superior energy of mind, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material, inferior nature. Okay, so that's what it says. The living entities mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 7.5 as para prakriti. In other words, we are not part of the ignorance. We're part of Krishna's transcendental energy. He is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord as potency and not as the potent. So that means we'll never be equal to the Lord. But we share some of the potency of the Lord. We have transcendental, let's say, identity. Okay. The potent can exhibit many potencies, but the potency cannot equal the potent at any stage. So we'll never be equal to the Lord. One potency may be overcome by another potency, but to the potent, all potencies are under his control. So Krishna is always the supreme controller. Right? The jiva potency, or the Kshetragya Shakti of the Lord, has the tendency to be overpowered by the external potency, avidya karma samganya, and in this way he is placed in the awkward circumstances of material existence. Well, he's referring now to the 13th chapter, verse number 3, where it says, Chitragya Chapitam Chapi, one second, Chitragyam Chapimam Vidi Sarvasetre Subharatam Chitra Chitra Gayor Gyanam Yataj Gyanam Matam Mama. O Skyne of Bharata, meaning O Arjuna, descendant of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion. Okay, now what's he talking about here? He's talking about the fact that there are two main souls in the body, the super soul and the jiva. Okay, so the jiva is not the only controlling, let's say, soul in the body. There's a superior controller, and that's the super soul. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, while discussing the subject of the body and the knower of the body, the soul and the super soul, we shall find three different topics of study: the Lord, the living entity, and matter. In every field of activities, in every body, there are two souls, the individual soul and the super soul, because the super soul is the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Krishna says, I am also the knower, but I am not the individual knower of the body. I am the super knower. I am present in every body as the Paramatma, or the super soul. Okay. And then it says, one who studies the subject matter of the field of activity, meaning the body, and the knower of the field, meaning there's two knowers. There's the jiva and there's the supersoul. And the knower of the field very minutely, in other words, you have to study it very carefully in all its details, in terms of this Bhagavad Gita, can attain to knowledge. Okay, so this is, therefore, okay, when we say the word jnana, what does that mean exactly? Jnana means you understand the avidya potency, or the material nature, with three modes of nature, and basically ignorance. Then you understand the jiva, who is an energy of the Lord. So the jiva is transcendental, but it has the tendency to be overwhelmed by the third energy, which is the material nature, which is full of ignorance. So when you understand those three things, and then number 4, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the source of everything. The material nature, the jiva, and the supersoul, as well as the Virat Rupa, etc. So now that is called jnana, when you understand those things. Right? So, and then vijnana is you understand those things, and you accept that your position is to be always a servant to the Lord. And then vijnana, and then ananda means you actually experience transcendental ecstasy all the time by engagement in devotional service. So that is the highest pinnacle of consciousness. Okay. So then it says, he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord as potency and not as the potent. The potent can exhibit many potencies, but the potency cannot equal the potent in any stage. One potency may be overcome by another potency, but to the potent, all potencies are under control. The jiva potency, or the Chetragya Shakti of the Lord, has the tendency to be overpowered by the external potency, avidya karma samya. And in this way, he is placed in the awkward circumstances of material existence. The living entity cannot be forgetful of his real identity unless influenced by the avidya potency. Because the living entity is prone to the influence of the avidya potency, he can never equal the supreme potent. Okay, so this is a very important point, because our whole purpose in life is to liberate ourselves from illusory concepts. Where are those illusory concepts coming from? From the educational system, from social media, from newspapers, from news reportage, and so forth. It's coming from many different directions. And as long as we're willing to listen to that stuff, we get deeper and deeper into illusion. And we are being exploited all the time by demons. So in the Bhagavad Gita introduction on page 27, it says, Tasmat sarve sakale sumam anusmari yudhisha maya pratamano buddhir mam evaisya samsaya, which says, therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. Okay. So that's 8.7, right? Our way of saying hello. So here Prabhupada writes, he, meaning Krishna, does not advise Arjuna simply to remember him and give up his occupation. No. The Lord never suggests anything impractical. This impractical. In this material world, in order to maintain the body, one has to work. Human society is divided according to work into 4 divisions of social order: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. The Brahmana class, or intelligent class, is working in one way. The Kshatriya, or administrative class, is working in another way, and the mercantile class and the laborers are all tending to their specific duties. In the human society, whether one is a laborer, merchant, administrator, or farmer, or even if one belongs to the highest class and is a literary man or a scientist or a theologian, he has to work in order to maintain his existence. The Lord therefore tells Arjuna that he need not give up his occupation, but while he's engaged in his occupation, he should remember Krishna, Mam Anusmara. If he doesn't practice remembering Krishna while he is struggling for existence, then it will not be possible for him to remember Krishna at the time of death. So the more we remember Krishna, the more we're prepared at any moment to die and go back to Godhead. But the less we think of Krishna, we're preparing ourselves to always stay in the cycle of birth and death. So this remembrance of Krishna is the whole purpose of Vedic knowledge, to always remember the Lord in every circumstance and not be forgetful of the Lord. If he doesn't practice remembering Krishna while he's struggling for existence, meaning while you're working, then it will not be possible for him to remember Krishna at the time of death. Lord Chaitanya also advises this. He says, Kirtaniya Sadahari. One should practice chanting names of the Lord always. The names of the Lord and the Lord are non-different. So Lord Krishna's instructions to Arjuna to remember me, and Lord Chaitanya's instruction to always chant the names of Lord Krishna. So in other words, this Tasmat Sarve Sukale Sumam Anusmara Yudyacha Mayarpata Manopadir Mam Ivasi Samsaya as the same instruction that Lord Chaitanya says becomes Sadahari, Hari, always chant the names of Lord Krishna, right? Are the same instruction. There's no difference between Krishna and Krishna's name are non-different, because Krishna and Krishna's name are non-different. In the absolute status, there is no difference between reference and referent. Whoa, this is high philosophy, reference and referent. So there's you say something and then you refer to it. So it's the same thing. Right? There's no difference because Krishna and Krishna's name are non-different. In the absolute status, there's no difference between reference and referent. Therefore, we have to practice remembering the Lord always, 24 hours a day, by chanting his names and meditating and molding our life's activities in such a way that we can remember him always. Wow. How is this possible? The Acharyas give the following example. If a married woman is attached to another man, or if a man has an attachment for a woman other than his wife, then the attachment is to be considered very strong. One with such an attachment is always thinking of the loved one. The wife who is thinking of her lover is always thinking of meeting him, even while she is carrying out her household chores. In fact, she carries out her household work even more carefully, so her husband will not suspect her attachment. Similarly, we should always remember the Supreme Lover, Sri Krishna, and at the same time perform our material duties very nicely. A strong sense of love is required here. If we have a strong sense of love for the Supreme Lord, then we can discharge our duty and at the same time remember him. But we have to develop that sense of love. Arjuna, for instance, was always thinking of Krishna. He was the constant companion of Krishna. And at the same time, he was a warrior. Krishna did not advise him to give up fighting and go to the forest to meditate. When Lord Krishna delineates the yoga system to Arjuna, Arjuna says that the practice of this system is not possible for him. He's talking about Hatha Yoga. Arjuna vacha yoyam yogastvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham napasyami chanchalatvat stitim stiram. Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. Bhagavad Gita 6.33. In other words, what Krishna explains at the end of the 5th chapter and then throughout the 6th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, is the very severe types of what you would call higher yoga, such as Raja Yoga, and such as Kriya Yoga, and such as Astanga Yoga. These are very hard types of yoga practices. And Arjuna said, look, it's impossible for me, I can't do it. But then what does Lord Krishna say? Yoginam apisarvesam madgatanantaratmana Shadavam bhajate yomam same yuktatamo matak. He says, hey Arjuna, of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, in other words, always connected to Krishna. Matpara means always connected to the Lord and the Lord's instructions. Thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me, is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So there's 2 points here. The devotee is always thinking of the Lord and engaging in the loving service of the Lord. So that person is, and in other words, following the Lord's instructions, that person is the most intimately related to the Lord. And then it continues, so one who thinks of the Supreme Lord always is the greatest yogi, the supranost jnani, and the greatest devotee at the same time. He's the greatest yogi, the greatest of all the jnanis, and also the greatest devotee at the same time. The Lord further tells Arjuna that as a Kshatriya, he cannot give up his fighting. But if Arjuna fights remembering Krishna, then he will be able to remember Krishna at the time of death. But one must be completely surrendered in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is all like beautiful explanation by Prabhupada. We work not with our body, actually, but with our mind and intelligence. So if the intelligence and the mind are always engaged in the thought of the Supreme Lord, then naturally the senses are also engaged in his service. Specifically, superficially at least, the activities of the senses remain the same, but the consciousness is changed. The Bhagavad Gita teaches one how to absorb the mind and intelligence in the thought of the Lord. Such absorption will enable one to transfer himself to the kingdom of the Lord. If the mind is engaged in Krishna's service, then the senses are automatically engaged in his service. This is the art, and this is also the secret of Bhagavad Gita, total absorption in the thought of Sri Krishna. It's amazing purport by Prabhupada, teaching us how we can be always thinking of Krishna, at the same time doing our duties in life. If our purpose is to please Krishna through the instructions of bona fide gurus, then our mind is fixed on Krishna consciousness all the time. If our mind is fixed on pleasing myself and being able to exploit others and having sense gratification, then we're going to stay in this world. We're overcome completely by ignorance. So it is possible to work normally, maintain your family, etc., and at the same time think of Krishna 24 hours a day. It is possible. Okay. So, then it says, the living entity cannot be forgetful of his real identity unless influenced of the avidya potency, unless influenced by the avidya potency, because the living entity is prone to the influence of the avidya potency. He can never equal the supreme potent. So we'll never be equal to Krishna, but we can be coexistent because we're eternal, and we can participate in Krishna's transcendental knowledge, which is always increasing, and his transcendental ecstasies. So this is the book I was talking about. It's called Agnihotra, or Havan, right? And it's printed by the Arya Samaj of Greater Houston, and they have what's called Vedic Culture Center. 14375 Schiller Road, Houston, Texas, 77082. And then they say, principles of the Arya Samaj. I call it the Arya Hodgepodge. But anyway, it's Arya Samaj. Of all true knowledge, and whatever is known from knowledge, the primary cause is the highest Lord, that is, God. God is existent, intelligent, and blissful. He is formless, omnipotent, just, kind, unborn, endless, unchangeable, beginningless, unequaled, the support of all, the master of all, fearless, eternal, holy, and the creator of the universe. He alone is worthy of worship. What? He's formless? You see how they have to insult Krishna, right? So they say a lot of nice things, but in the middle of all that nice things, say he's formless. How can he be formless, right? If it's a he can't be formless, right? But you see how nonsense they are. But the rest continues. The Vedas are the books of all true knowledge. It is the paramount. Well, obviously they're not reading the Vedas correctly, right? They're giving some false knowledge here. It is the paramount duty of all Aryas to read them, to teach them, to hear them, and to preach them. Okay, fine. But if you preach the wrong thing, it's a complete waste of time, right? One should always be ready to accept truth and give up untruth. What? Your untruth is right there in your principles. He is formless. Come on. Everything should be done according to Dharma. That is, after considering what is truth and what is untruth. Well, obviously they haven't done that. So whatever they're going to do is going to be useless. The chief object of the Arya Samaj is to do good to the world. That is, to promote physical, spiritual, and social good of every human being. We should send them some goodness cookies. We should treat all with love. Well, they're treating everyone but Krishna with love, right, by insulting him. We should treat all with love and justice according to the dictates of Dharma. Well, what about the dictates of Krishna? Say, we should dispel. By the way, they don't mention Krishna here at all. Right? They don't say Narayana. They don't say Krishna. They don't say Madhav. We should dispel ignorance and spread knowledge. What they're spreading is ignorance. One should not be content with one's own welfare alone, but should consider the progress of all as one's own. Okay, that's in other words, Manava Seva as Madhava Seva, that's basically. Everyone is bound in obeying social and all befitting rules, but is free in matters pertaining to individual well-being. You're never free, sir. You're always under the control of he, meaning Krishna, right? Not he who is formless. So you see, the whole thing is nonsense, but they get away with it because people are nonsense. They don't have any knowledge, so they believe this avidya shakti. They have avidya shakti. Okay, so then what time is it? What time is it? 7:02. Okay. So then. Which text? The previous verse? Because I didn't explain something.
I think we skipped the fourth.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, we skipped it, yeah. I went right away to the fifth. Okay. Ashrakshid Bhagavan Viswam Gunamayatma Mayaya Taya Samstapayat Etad Bhuya Pratya Pidasyati. Ashrakshit, cause to create. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Vishwam, the universe. Guna Maya, endowed with three modes of material nature. Atma, self. Mayaya, by the potency. Taya, by her. Samstapayati, maintains. Etat, all these. Bhuya, then again. Pratyapidasyati, conversely dissolves also. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. By His self-sheltered potency of the three modes of material nature, the Lord has caused the creation of this universe. By her, He maintains the creation and conversely dissolves it again and again. Notice he's mentioning her, right? By His self-sheltered potency of the three modes of material nature, the Lord has caused the creation of this universe. Okay. By her, He maintains the creation and conversely dissolves it again and again. So Maya is the superintendent of the material world. And she has a lot of powers. And she's not going to let go until someone completely surrenders to Krishna. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This cosmic universe is created by the Lord for those living entities who are carried away from Krishna, by the illusory thought of becoming one with Him by imitation. Wow, that's a description of the Arya Samajis. The three modes of material nature are for the further bewilderment of the conditioned souls. In other words, we're already bewildered by Maya. But now we have to deal also with the three modes of material nature. Right? The conditioned living entity, bewildered by the illusory energy, considers himself a part of the material creation due to forgetfulness of his spiritual identity, and thus he becomes entangled in material activities life after life. This material world is not for the purpose of the Lord Himself, but for the conditioned souls who wanted to be controllers due to misuse of their God-gifted minute independence. Thus, the conditioned souls are subjected to repeated birth and death. So here it is. It says, the conditioned living entity, bewildered by the illusory energy, that's Maya. So the bewilderment starts with Maya. And what is Maya? Maya, just like Surpanaka, she's actually ugly, but she could change her body into a beautiful woman. That's Maya. Right? When you see something made of matter that's very beautiful, like a Tesla, right? Or a very nice house, or whatever, a beautiful woman or a very handsome man. So people become attracted by that false beauty because it's material, it's not spiritual. Krishna is a spiritual beauty, but what I just mentioned are all material so-called beauties, right? So when you become attracted to the so-called beauties, that's why there's Sankhya Yoga. What is Sankhya about? Sankhya is basically like this. whenever you see something in the material world, if you break it down into the 24 elements, as you're doing that, at one point you lose your attraction. So, in other words, you'd say, well, here's a beautiful, handsome man, So now you're going to do Sankhya. Well, his body is made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So, basically his body is like a bag that's contained externally by skin. So let's take the skin off. Oh, now we see some blood and a lot of organs. So let's start pulling them out also. So you pull out the intestines. 25, 30 feet long intestines, And now let's look at the heart, pull that out. And let's look at the liver. Let's pull it. Now all of a sudden, we lost attraction. It's not pretty anymore. It's bloody, and you have these things that are like slimy. The liver, you hold it, and like you squeeze it a little bit, and it shoots up in the air, out of your hands, And the heart also is like the buttery and everything. It doesn't look good, and the intestines have stool in them, right? So all of a sudden, as soon as we opened up the body a little bit to analyze it, we lose the attraction to it, right? So that's why this Sankhya Yoga. Now, let's say you have Krishna, and you're actually seeing Krishna like Arjuna is seeing Krishna. Well, first of all, his body is not made with all, with the gallbladder and the liver and the heart and the lungs and the intestines and no, it's made with eternity, bliss, and knowledge, or eternity, knowledge, and bliss. So now it's a different story. We cannot lose our attraction for Krishna because he has an eternal body. And his body is full of bliss, knowledge. So there's the difference. And if we don't do that, if we just stick with the skin and don't take a deeper look into the person's body, then we can be attracted to it. And then on that skin they can put lipstick, and they can put mascara, and they can have a wig on, and they can have plastic surgery, and they look like a beautiful person, but actually it's all fake. Why is it fake? Because it's temporary. It's not going to last. And to make it last artificially, they use plastic surgery, they use Botox, they use supplements, this thing, that thing, right? So therefore, you see how easy it is to be bewildered. That's what it's saying here. The cosmic universe is created by the Lord for those living entities who are carried away by the illusory thought of becoming one with Him by imitation. Okay, now this is the Mayavadis. They're not aiming at the beautiful man or the beautiful woman. They're aiming at He who is formless, like these guys, right? They're Mayavadis, right? Because they think God is formless. But they want to get the potency. They want to get the Shakti, right? So the three modes of nature are for the further bewilderment of the conditioned souls. They're already carried away by the illusory thought of becoming one with the Lord by imitation. Then the three modes of material nature are for the further bewilderment of the conditioned souls. The conditioned living entities, bewildered by the illusory energy, consider himself a part of the material creation due to forgetfulness of his spiritual identity, and thus he becomes entangled in material activities, life after life. As soon as he believes, I'm only this body, there's no such thing as a soul, there's no Vaikuntha, there's no Goloka, there's no Krishna. Now we're going deeper into ignorance. These are the speculator philosophers and scientists, and these are the empiricists, and these are the hardcore Mayavadis, like the Buddhists and so forth. So then they get entangled in material activities, life after life. This material world is not for the purpose of the Lord himself, but for the conditioned souls who wanted to be controllers due to misuse of their God-gifted minute independence. Thus, the conditioned souls are subjected to repeated birth and death. So wait a minute here. We can see that everybody, every jiva, has limited free will. So shouldn't that be the first thing we teach a child? You have limited free will. You can choose to be with Krishna, or you can choose to be with Maya. So that's why I gave a homework to our kids. It was to map out your 24 hours and see how many of those hours you're thinking of Krishna and how many of those hours you're not thinking of Krishna. Well, anyone can do this. And we can see that there are periods that they were not thinking of Krishna at all. In fact, it could be long periods. Right? We're just thinking of something else without any connection to Krishna. So the idea is that we should connect everything with Krishna in our life. Right? So if I'm working, just like yesterday, I spent the whole day researching how much money we spent putting on the color festival and the veg festival, and then collecting all the checks, and getting photos of all the checks that we purchase that purchase things, and putting all that information together. I thought it was going to be very difficult, so I prayed to Krishna in the morning, please help me do this, because first of all, I don't like doing things like this, but I have to do it. So by Krishna's mercy, by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, I did it. Haribol. It took all day, but I was able to do it. And then I started chanting in the temple room, trying to thank Krishna for helping me. I couldn't have done it on my own. He definitely helped me. So you see, you can spend your whole life like that, because we're going to be challenged by things that we have to do materially for maintenance, right? So you can't get away from it, and that's what he says, right? Everyone has to work to maintain themselves. And so how can you remember Krishna if you're working? Well, if you work and offer the result to Krishna, then you're thinking of Krishna. And if you work and say, well, this is for Krishna, and this is for me, and that's for Krishna, and this is for me, and this is for me, well, then you're not working 100%. You're not really thinking about Krishna. You are thinking about him somewhat, and that's good, but this is for Krishna, this is for me. The for me part will keep you in the material world. But if everything is for Krishna, now how do you do that? Well, most people think it's not possible, but it is possible. Prabhupada says it's possible. We just read it in the introduction of Bhagavad Gita. So therefore we have to learn from Prabhupada how to do this. Right? And then we'll talk some more about it. Okay, so we'll stop right there, and now we'll have are there any questions?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Yes.
So the verse we read just now and then next verse, there are two potencies mentioned. Are those same? Like in the current verse we talked about the self-sheltered potency, and then in the next verse we talked about avidya potency. Are those referred to Maya?
Which potency?
Avidya potency.
Avidya, yeah. Well, there are three major potencies. There's the internal potency of the Lord, there's the jiva, which is the marginal potency of the Lord, and then there's the external potency of the Lord. There are three. Now, there are subtitles of those potencies, but those are the three major potencies.
So are these two both? So first one I understand that is referring to Maya. Is it the same?
Now, the first
both
one
are called.
first one is Krishna's internal energy. You're talking about Radharani, talking about Yoga Maya, things like that. And then the second one is the Jiva, you and me. Right? And then the third potency is Maya potency. Maya potency is not the first one.
No, I am talking about the self-centered potency specifically and avidya potency.
Yeah.
So are both potency mentioned here are referring to Maya?
Avidya is Maya potency, yes. That's what it is. Okay. So, let's see where it says that.
In the current verse it is in a translation, and then second verse it is in a purport, at the end of the purport.
By his self-sheltered potency of the three modes of nature, the Lord has caused the creation of this universe. By her, he maintains the creation and conversely dissolves it again and again. So, the cosmic universe is created by the Lord for those living entities who are carried away by the illusory thought of becoming one with him by imitation. The three modes of material nature are for the further bewilderment of the conditioned souls. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. Okay, so the first one is it's the Maya potency, right? And then the second one, under control of Maya, are the three modes of material nature, which further entangles someone. And then there's other things too, but that's what it's talking about.
Okay. The second was avidya, the next verse actually. Yeah.
And then, the avidya potency.
Yeah.
And we talked about that.
Yeah.
Because you have the one potency may be overcome by another. So in other words, avidya karma samganya, that's from the Vishnu Purana, which is our attraction to Maya. It's the attraction to Maya. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as we are attracted, we become entrapped by Maya. So this is happening to everybody, especially when one reaches puberty, right? 12, 13 years old. Because then the unfinished desires from our previous life awakens in our mind, and suddenly we become attracted to things that we were not attracted to when we were younger. Because those are the unfinished desires that come back. And all of a sudden you get overwhelmed when you're like 12, 13, 14 years old. Right. And then by that attraction, we're placed in the awkward circumstances of material existence. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, engaging in sinful activity, and so forth. So the living entity cannot be forgetful of his real identity unless influenced by the avidya potency. So the avidya potency is social media, movies, speculation, speculative books, speculative theories, all that stuff, Bollywood, Hollywood. You become attracted to those things, and then you're under the avidya influence.
Yeah. And then the second question, Maharaj, I have the second purport, very first line, Prabhupada mentioned about the soul never never lost the consciousness, or is always, right?
The consciousness of living beings is always present and never changes.
Or never lost. So how we explain this in our case of person goes into coma. So he, in that maybe it's like years he doesn't understand anything, right? So is it?
No, you don't know. You don't know. People in coma, they can still hear people talking to them. They just can't answer. And they're seeing things in their, like in a dream, you're seeing things. So the consciousness is working, but it's on a different level. Just like you have consciousness when you're going into sleep and when you're coming out of sleep, but not in deep sleep. So the mind is still working, and you can hear things also, even in a coma. Yeah. All right, we'll continue tomorrow. Haribol. Thank you.
Maharaj, avidya potency means any material knowledge as well, like how to make anything like material.
Anything that's not connected to Krishna. Okay. I mean, we cook for Krishna, so that's a material thing, right? But it becomes spiritual because it's for Krishna. But we're using material things. But when you use material things for not for Krishna, then that's Maya. Shri Guru Charana Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bando Mui Sabadana Mate Bando Mui Sabadana Mate Janara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatori Ajay Krishna Prapti Hoya Te Krishna Prapti Hoya Te Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Kya Arana Koriya Maneya Sa Arana Koriya Maneya Sa Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati Ye Prasade Pure Sarvaja Ye Prasade Pure Sarvaja Shakshudana Dila Jay Janame Janmi Prabhu Se Divya Jnani De Prakasito Prema Bhakti Jaha Hote Avidya Vina Sajate Vedega Janara Charito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Lokanath Lokera Jivana Ha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha More Padachaya. Ha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha More Padachaya. Ebe Asgusati Bhuvana. Ebe Asgusati Bhuvana. Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaura, Haribo, Nitai Gaura. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajikachalasta Terasatara Shri Shri Shrimad. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnavini, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Shri Goho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to Samudra, all glories to Samudra, all glories to Samudra, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavani Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Bhakti Samata Bhakti Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Chandi Vise Samaskati. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we attain the pure devotion. I bow down.